Hey y'all, hope you're doing good today. So let me check my microphone real quick. Okay, I believe we're good. I just wanted to stop by for a quick message just for food for thought. That's the way I'm going to um, basically look at the message today. I'm going to be pulling some quotes for fun out of this book, A Year of Zen, and this is an older book. This is from 2023. I might actually buy the 2025 one if they still make them. And we might have some fun with that for future videos. But just wanted to give you guys some quotes out of it for you to think about and to journal on, and I hope you enjoy the message. I did actually run across something very interesting, which I'm going to share at the end. And afterwards, I made additional notes, and I think that there could be a rabbit hole that if you wanted to go down that from what I'm going to share with you all, it might be kind of fun. So we'll see. But I want to share, this is from Milan Kundera. And if you have the 2023 book, it's going to be from March 22nd, okay, is the date that this quote is on. But it says the Greek word for return is nostos, nostos. And then it says algos means suffering. So nostalgia is the suffering caused by an unappeased yearning to return. And I think that this is important when we're talking about healing and growing and learning. Those of us on that kind of a path, right, especially after hard times in life or a big life transition, challenges, whatever. I think that it's hard to make a distinction when you are dealing with stuff presently, when you are looking back to the past, when you're trying to look to the future, like what now, and you're dealing with stuff. It's kind of hard to make a distinction between when you have negative feelings you're working through. It's kind of like how much of that is directly from whatever you went through recently that's been tough versus, have you actually been dealing with stuff subconsciously for a long time, and has that in your past, even though not consciously acknowledged, affected or clouded rather your view of the future. I've got a sign hanging up in here that says every day is a fresh start, and then I've got one that says sunny days are ahead. I try to be very positive with an intentional mindset when I look to the future. And there's been times in my life where my future was very much planned out. It doesn't always go as planned, as we know, but I had very distinct plans for my future. And then there's been other times, especially recently, where it's not so hard set. And I think that we all get to that place at some point after experiencing the fact that our plans don't always come to fruition, or either they fall through or they take a turn, somewhere along the way. And so, but I think making this distinction, if you've really been dealing with stuff, okay, I'll just say that, for some time, trying to figure out, what do I don't want to use the word blame, but what do I define as the cause of my suffering, where do I draw that line, between this particular person or situation versus maybe my childhood, maybe something I haven't evaluated yet. All this can get really heavy because I think we try to, is the word delineate? We try to box all this stuff in and make sense of it, and it's just kind of all woven together so tightly that it's hard to make these distinctions, and I think that's okay. I think that we can find peace and kind of not letting it go, but just sort of softening our approach with trying to make sense of things sometimes. And so when I read this quote, what came to my mind was the concept of the closest label I have to define this concept would be, that I've heard of, existential crisis. And I know it's defined differently depending on where you do your research. But my understanding of that essentially is that, some of us, especially probably the deep thinkers, right? Which I am one, we want answers. We want to understand sometimes the things that can't be understood for some reason. It's like we have this need to know, and we feel like if we just find the answer out, we'll finally be at peace, you know. And I think that for a lot of people, they've accepted that it's some things are just truly unknowable, and it comes down to faith and belief, and just hope that in the afterlife maybe you'll you'll be given the answers, like eventually. But I think that when you hear labels and terms like this thrown around as existential crisis, I think we all deal with that to a degree, even if not consciously. And I think it's a matter of how you look at it, your perspective, what angle you're coming at it or looking at it from, right? And so, in this life experience, you don't want to gaslight yourself if you've been through some hard times and just try to force yourself to deny your reality, which is called toxic positivity, right? Is the latest term I've heard. And I'm glad that somebody came up with it. I think it's been misused. I think a lot, if not every, phrase has been misused, either intentionally or not, probably both. But I'm glad that this label exists just for acknowledgement, for us to be able to become conscious of this concept, through this label, toxic positivity. And so, I'm not proposing that we do that. I just think that we can acknowledge what we've been through. We can acknowledge the bad stuff. And yet, if we zoom out and we look at the big picture, we can say, it's not all bad. It's not all good. Well, I guess that's debatable, right? Depending on things. But especially if you've been through some really hard stuff, I think it's hard to really go there and say it's all good, even considering Romans 8:28. But I think that instead of going through life with this mentality that we are a prisoner, it's just not going to be good for us. It's not going to be conducive to health, to just living a balanced life. It's just not the way to go, in my opinion. And so I think we do need to make every effort to not sink down into and latch onto our suffering. I think we need to give it its season, its due season, but yet at some point we need to be able to let it go. I've always loved fall, and I don't really know why. It's I found this, maybe I'll show you guys a picture, this little artwork. God, where did I find it? Kirkland's, or I think maybe Hobby Lobby? I can't remember. But it says, "Life starts all over again when it gets crisp in the fall." And this is from F. Scott Fitzgerald, right? So, for whatever reason, to me, in the fall, it feels like the new year for me. It always has. It feels like the start, like a fresh start. Like when you think of, a lot of people do spring cleaning. I do fall cleaning. It's just, to my soul, my spirit and my soul, fall is refreshing in that way. And, if you think about fall, it's a lot of falling away and death, with the leaves, and everything goes dormant or, asleep. There's, hibernation begins to be a thing with nature and the animals and the grass and everything. So, and yet it's also simultaneously a time of harvest, of plenty, of abundance. So I love this because fall in itself embraces the spirit or the essence of paradox. It's both a lack, a dying, a letting go, and a bringing in, a harvest. So it's both. And so when you break it down, it's kind of like, well, yeah, no wonder, at least for me, it feels like a beginning. I guess it's both an ending and a beginning. And I love that. And I guess every season we could say that about, but just taking fall as the example. But with this whole concept of suffering and existential crisis, and I think that all of us, to some degree want answers. Like, why? I think that it's not good to go around latching on to that, the bad feelings, the depression, and thinking of yourself as a victim or a prisoner, but you're also going to be fooling yourself if you are thinking that life is always grand, and even though we're not here in this physical form forever, just to say, well, even if I'm here a short time, it's like I'm this guest at a beautiful, serene vacation, location, whatever it is, ideal place. That's not realistic either, So I think we have to give all of our feelings and all of our seasons and all of our experiences their season. And once we do that, I think then moving beyond that is good. And so nostalgia, I thought, this is really interesting. It's the suffering caused by an unappeased yearning to return. I'm sure we can all look back and remember a time in our life that was very peaceful and good and happy and all this. And I think that maybe the best thing, this is what I've done, the best way to look at things like that, especially if your present is not so great, instead of sinking into sadness, looking back, I think that we can understand that this is a great example, whatever time this was in the past. I think that maybe we can use this as an example that times do come and go, and that means that a hard time is going to pass as well, and there will be good again, So we just have to keep kind of a dynamic view at this life experience, I want to share, this is from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and this is from February 15th, that page. It says, "Our life is an apprenticeship to the truth that around every circle another can be drawn, that there is no end in nature, that every end is a beginning, that there is always another dawn risen on mid-noon, and under every deep a lower deep opens." And what I wrote on this page is expansiveness. And I think that, again, if we keep this mindset of wanting to expand our perspective, it's going to serve us well. And just to understand that there's always going to be things that we don't know, and experiences that we haven't had. And so the potential is always there. And this can be, I think it's just kind of neutral, or maybe even good. In a bad sense, you might say, well, you don't really even know how bad things can get until you get there, especially if you've experienced something and you've experienced being very shocked. You may have had those kind of thoughts, but it can also be the reverse, that even, I've mentioned this before, with your best foot forward, your best intentions implemented literally through your actions and planning and everything, God can still surprise you and make things even better than you could have ever orchestrated yourself. And so just keep that in mind. Just an expanded mindset, right? You are held within the web of life, within flows of energy and intelligence far exceeding your own. This is from Joanna Macy, January 26, 2023. That page in this Zen book, A Year of Zen. Yeah, I think that's just a comforting perspective. It's kind of like a different way to look at, or an angle we can choose to perceive surrender, the concept of surrender. That it's not like giving up, but just an acknowledgement of a higher power. And I like how she says we are held We are held within the web of life. That's not caught. It feels sometimes like we're just caught, you know, in some hardships or whatever, but we are held. That's like an essence of nurturing, like a mother, you know, with her child. And so, just one lens to use, to consider that the one in charge of all of this actually loves us. And so, whatever reason we're going through hardships, you know, we may never know in this life. I skipped something I was going to share earlier with you all. Yeah. Have y'all ever seen the movie called The Game? I believe it's Michael Douglas that's in that movie. If I'm wrong, I'll check it and I'll put it in the description. But it's a really interesting movie. And I sort of hate to give it away, but I want to talk about it. So, if you don't want any spoilers, then I will give you the warning now, and you can just kind of fast forward, and I'll do a thumbs up when I'm done talking about the spoilers. But if you want to hear about it, as far as surrender, the concept of surrender, and being held within the web of life, within flows of energy and intelligence far exceeding your own. Again, I said it's a comforting perspective. In that movie, he starts experiencing some weird stuff. And I don't really have a good term to label what he went through. I think I've heard a term that would maybe best describe it, called gang stalking, where he's like just living his life, going to work and stuff, and yet like there's random letters left for him. Y'all, it's been years and years since I've seen this movie. I may not be recalling it exactly spot on, but he has all this stuff just happening in his life, like somebody's messing with him, right? And it's about to drive him crazy. And it takes him to like the brink of insanity or whatever. So he's literally in a battle for his sanity throughout the whole movie. Okay. And you're just right at the edge of your seat, so to speak. I love it. I love this movie. I really enjoyed it when I watched it. But this whole time, it's a mystery for him and for us. And in the end, it was revealed that it was truly all a game. If I'm not mistaken, this is how I'm remembering it, so I'm going to go ahead and share it, even if it's not right. This is how I remember it, okay? I believe he was either very lonely or his life had gotten really monotonous. I don't know if he was just super wealthy and had literally lived and gone and done everything you could possibly do, and had just reached a place of stagnation and sort of depression or what. There was something like that going on, I think, in his life. And I think his friends noticed that he needed something to keep going. And if I'm not mistaken, there's even an old saying about this. I'll have to look and see and drop it in the description later if I can find it. But he needed something. He needed something to hold on to mentally and to work with, like almost like a project to keep him going or something like that. And so that's what they did for him. And it was, weeks long or even months long. I don't remember how long it was, but it was just really bizarre stuff. And he was just fully engaged in it. And so, but it kept him going, even though it almost drove him to, insanity. So, but it was all a game. It was all revealed that it was all just, just an act, a circus. And so, it's an incredible movie. But, yes. So when I think about things like in the Bible, I think it's Romans 8:28, God works all things for the good of those who love him. There's a debate on, is God good and bad? Does he play the role of good and bad, the trickster, archetype concept, or not? And, my perception is there's another verse that said he's all good, there's nothing bad in him. That's my belief. And I think that through the design, which I talked about in my last video, of free will, he allows free will and the consequences and everything that come from it to be part of this life experience for all of it. So we do affect one another, as y'all know. And so, where am I going with this? My perspective of Romans 8:28 is that he works with it. He uses all things. He doesn't create it all, the good and the bad. He allows the bad, and that's hard to accept, I understand, but he uses it for the good. It doesn't, I think sometimes we think about concepts of the greater good, but it says he uses everything, all for the good of those who love him. So that's a very specific part of that verse that's important, I think. So he works with it, kind of like, that whole concept of if you're given lemons, make lemonade kind of thing. That's kind of what it's saying God does. Okay. So, with that the Game movie, I thought that was kind of a related something to bring up, So, yes, as far as struggle and suffering and everything turning out good and all this. All right, the last page it's actually 2 different dates. It's the weekend. They put the weekend on one page, Saturday and Sunday. I want to share these quotes. This is from January 28th, 2023 and January 29th, 2023. The one on the 28th, it says, I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it. And this is from, it says, The Matrix Zen. This may be a book or something, I don't know. Or maybe from the movie even. But yes, I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it. I think that, when we're on this journey and we go through stuff and we think, okay, so I'm going to start studying in hopes that I don't have to go through so much more. But the thing is, I think that part of the design and part of the concept of surrender is understanding that just like when you're trying to teach your kids stuff and you have to tell them over and over, don't do that, you're going to get hurt, don't do that, you're going to get hurt, and then they do it anyway. It's like maybe God understands as our Heavenly Father, and I hope this is still beneficial to you regardless of your beliefs. My messages are open to all, so I just want to say that. But sometimes I wonder if He's just like, you've got to learn it for yourself. You've got to learn it for yourself. And just like it says, I can show you the door. Like He can be like, look, I've given you these guidelines. Even with Adam and Eve, the first people, He's like, don't do that. Don't do that. That's like showing them the door, right? Like of the right decision. But they have to be the ones to go through it. They have to be the ones to actually make that decision, to put things into action. It's kind of like, and then they failed. They failed. So I think maybe that's just part of this experience. And that's just a great story highlighting the fact that we have to, maybe that's where your understanding comes from. Remember, I've said many times, one of my favorite verses where it says, wisdom is the principal thing. And then it differentiates and it says, and with all you're getting, get understanding. So it's differentiating between wisdom and understanding. So maybe you can just accumulate all this, wisdom, and yet the understanding doesn't kick in until you experience. So I just wanted to say that, just to give yourself a break. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of just relax and understand that that's the best way to learn. The other quote is from Henry David Thoreau, and it says, truth is always paradoxical, which is a conclusion I came to myself. And so I looked up the definition of paradoxical. It says, two opposing things true at once. And there's also a term called dialectics. I love how it's kind of, it doesn't really irritate me, it's just kind of interesting. And I think this is true in all industries, not just psychology and philosophy. But even like when I was teaching, when I would go to our meetings and stuff, they'd have people from the county come sometimes, and there'd be like this new concept or whatever. And they would throw out new terms, and you're sitting here thinking, especially the teachers that I was friends with that were almost to retirement, and they had been through a lot of changes in the school system and meetings and stuff. And they would hear these new concepts, and they would be like, it's the same thing that, we've always done. And they could literally sit there and tell you, like, we'd have lunch together, and they'd be like, recalling everything. They'd be like, in the 80s, they used this term. In the 90s, they used this term. A few years ago, they were using this term. Now they're using this term, but it's all the same thing. It all means the same thing. So, anyway, I just find that interesting. So, dialectics. And maybe there is a distinction that I don't know between the concept of paradox and dialectics. I don't know. But, I'm just saying in general. But essentially, paradox is coexisting opposites, right? So also a situation, person, or thing. This was like an official, I don't know if it was Oxford Languages where I got this definition online. I Googled it, right? For paradox, a situation, person, or thing that combines contradictory features or qualities. So, it also paradox means something that's absurd, an absurd statement, or fantastic, something that goes so strongly against the status quo, the common opinion or whatever, that it's just absurd. That can be called a paradox. I didn't know that. I thought it only strictly meant, two opposing opposites. And then, this was in the online etymology dictionary looking up paradox. It says, and this is important, this is something that is, when I read this, I thought, okay, this is how wolves in sheep's clothing that are really slick and covert, okay, work your minds, how they manipulate. Listen to this. This is in the online etymology dictionary under the term paradox, a little ways down. Specifically in logic, I think it's funny how it gets loud all of a sudden. I've got my door open. I mean, the loudest racket ever. Hopefully you guys can't hear it. Tractors, they are working on the road, but it's been totally quiet till now. Ironic? Coincidence? Or not? I don't know. Okay. Specifically in logic, a statement or proposition from an acceptable premise, and following sound reasoning that yet leads to an illogical conclusion. And that's what it's like when you experience psychological manipulation. All these different tactics I could throw out, all kind of other labels and terms, but just to sum it up. And then you try to explain it. It's kind of like you can't explain it, but you know what you went through, and everything seems fine on the surface, again, because there's an acceptable premise and there's sound reasoning, but yet the outcome is so illogical that you deny your own reality and nobody else believes it either. So proof is important if you can get proof with stuff. But yeah, I thought that's a great way to explain how these wolves in sheep's clothing work. Messing with people's minds, right? And then remember, it said specifically or especially in logic. I looked up logic. And from here, I'm going to share my notes, but this is sort of like branching off into a different direction. If you wanted to do some research, you could. I may do it later and expand on this in another video. But with logic, it says from the mid-14th century, a branch of philosophy that treats of forms of thinking, the science of distinction of true from false thinking. And immediately I was thinking of logos, and sure enough it says logic from logos, which means reason, idea, and word. Okay, logos also means the divine word. Okay, also reason, judgment, and understanding. And Jesus was the Word, is the Word. Think about it. The world, society, the world, crucified the Word. They crucified Jesus, okay? And remember, the Word is logos, also reason, judgment, and understanding. So here you're seeing this conflict, the worldly conflict with the spiritual conflict that the world is going to, in general, right, deny or crucify reasoning, understanding through tactics such as statements or propositions from acceptable premises, yet and following sound reasoning, right? And you're like, yeah, when you're listening like to these leaders or whatever, and yet the conclusion is illogical, and you're kind of like, you're so vested at that point, you've been taken on this ride in your mind, and then I think sometimes people just go along with it, and that's how they're coerced and persuaded and fooled, because they're so vested. I don't know if your ego's so involved you can't back out and say, no, I don't agree with that, even though it sounded okay going up, leading up to it. I don't know what happens, but see, crucifying our understanding, and again, crucify is to subdue or mortify. To subdue is to overcome. Overcoming our understanding is getting us to basically let go of our own understanding and surrender that to another person, see, and taking on their understanding, even though there's eventually an illogical conclusion. So it's just kind of, I thought that was a really interesting little route that all of this research took me today, and I just had to share that with you all. So again, we're told in the Bible that wisdom is the principal thing, and with all you're getting, get understanding. So really, understanding is the principal thing, right? It's part of wisdom. But with all our getting, we're supposed to get understanding. Understanding is logos, the divine word, which was crucified through tactics like this. I hope this helps. Trust yourself, trust your gut, trust your intuition. If it's coming from a loving, heavenly Father, it's going to be rooted and grounded in peace and all good things and balance, and there will be no illogical conclusion with those kind of promptings or those kind of ideas or thoughts or whatever. So just be careful out there. Just try to be conscious of the fact that there are wolves in sheep's clothing. I have my little sculpture here. I'll share with you all. There it is. Wolf in sheep's clothing, you know. Do I like to just focus on stuff like this all day long? No, of course not. Is it important to be aware and to remind ourselves sometimes? Because we can be even coerced to let our guard down, and then we don't even catch this stuff. You know, it's important to stay aware of it, you know, be mindful of it, but you don't have to be fearful, that's for sure. So, because remember, we are held, you know, spiritually speaking, our mind and heart, and don't forget that, you know what I mean? I hope this has been helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me say this too. I've been decorating for Halloween lately, and I didn't actually do as much as I normally do. I just put a few things out. I bought these little ghost lights that I hung up on my window, and they're really cool. I tried to take a picture of it. They don't photograph well in the daytime. I should have done it last night, but they have they're little tiny ghosts on a string, you know, battery operated, and I've got bats and pumpkins too. The pumpkins are actually hanging up behind me. I don't know if you can see them right there. And they go to like a little battery operated compartment deal up here. I've got hidden behind my pine cones, but they're so cute, and I have little ghosts too. And they're white, and the light is like a blue white, and it's really cool. And yet in my home, I prefer more of the warm white lights. They're just more comforting to me. And I think about the song that I love by Billie Holiday, Blue Moon, you know. She's talking about being lonely. Then when she finds, you know, this great love, she says, the moon turns to gold. So there's something soothing to the soul, even with our lighting, you know, and color. So think about things like that. anything you can do in your life to bring peace, even with your lighting. I think the ghosts, with them having a blue-white tone, they're kind of like, it's not something immediately when I turned them on, I thought, ooh, this is, that's not the kind of color I'd want to have all around me. But I thought for Halloween, that's appropriate, It really gets your attention, but it's not soothing like this warmer light here. But just consider your environment. That's a part of your life experience, and just try to bring balance to your life in every way you can, even with your feng shui. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but just your surroundings, your environment, try to make a happy atmosphere with colorful paintings and fun sayings and things that you enjoy, and plants. I love plants, and so consider that too on your path, on your healing journey. I think it really impacts us more than what we realize. I feel a whole lot better about everything when my house is in order. I'll say that. When it's just a mess and I've got stuff piled up and heaped up all around I haven't tackled yet, it's irritating to my soul. So you don't need that. So just bring that into mind too, and try to create a little beautiful, peaceful haven that you can return to every day after your job and your errands and everything, that you can return to and have that place of peace that you can think clearly in, because that's so important. Because we know that when your mind has been worked, you wind up being in a perpetual fog. And so you don't need to add to that, right? Unconsciously. So again, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've got something good to enjoy. This is my water I put in my witch's brew coffee cup. Try to find just little bits and pieces of happiness here and there. My daughter and I, we go all through the yard and collect dandelions and acorns and fun things like that. And it's just, joy can be found anywhere if you're looking for it. You know what I mean? I hope you enjoyed this. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.